From the Delhi studios of Republic TV, it's time for Arnab Goswami on the debate.
Arnab Goswami on the debate at 9. Presented by Amity University. Powered by RP Sanjeev Goenka Group. Acco Health Insurance. Century Ply. Club Prime. JK Tire. And PolicyBazaar.com.
Good evening and welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, Republic Network's 2018 Sting has set the global agenda tonight. As India gives it back to Canada, as Trudeau is getting pushed into an isolated corner of his own doing, a Republic Sting tape of 2018 that was shot in London pieces the whole Khalistani plot together. And I shall explain it to you tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, an undated video has gone viral. Footage shows Jagmeet Singh, who is a Canadian member of parliament and India hater, effectively, and a man considered very, very close to the Khalistanis in Canada. Jagmeet Singh, ladies and gentlemen, who's on the right-hand side of the screen, is the man who's been leaned upon by Trudeau, many believe, for politics within. Jagmeet Singh has been the pioneer of India hate in Canada. And ladies and gentlemen, Jagmeet Singh, who says he's a contender for the highest office in Canada, allegedly met Khalistani supporter, a member of the Khalistan group, Shamsher Singh. Shamsher Singh, ladies and gentlemen, was the man caught in a Republic Sting tape of 2018 when our senior editor Shawan Singh caught him in London. He was recorded by Republic Network bragging about an armed movement against the Indian state. Shamsher Singh was caught detailing the entire plot to break up India, from freeing Maoists to branding Brahmins as the enemy, to calling Pakistan the ally of Khalistani terror. He spoke about the plan to assassinate Indian government officials and lined up a hit list on the Republic Sting tape. We had it all on Sting tape, ladies and gentlemen, in 2018. And look at the two people on two sides of the screen, viewers. On one side of the screen is Jagmeet Singh, who is the man on whose support Trudeau's government continues. And on the other side is an open Khalistani terrorist. Ladies and gentlemen, the fact of the matter is the biggest political supporter and ally of Trudeau is hands in glove with Khalistani groups. We at Republic had raised our voice at that point of time against this global plot of Khalistani terror. And today there is vindication, because as Shamsher Singh allegedly squats in the UK and the links to Canada become more and more apparent, and Trudeau flapping about his answers only corroborate this global terror plot against India. Ladies and gentlemen, it is prudent to say tonight that Republic is the only network that has established the first direct link between the Khalistanis and the Canadian government. And as questions grow louder and louder and the silence of Trudeau and company grow heavier and heavier, it becomes wholly apparent to me that Trudeau's game is up, because freedom of expression and this pathetically failed act to try and put India in the spot will cost him, because the facts are tumbling thick and fast out of the Canadian closet. Gangster culture, ladies and gentlemen, open support to terrorism, cohabiting with terrorist groups, giving sanctuary to international terrorists. Ladies and gentlemen, I think Canada has ended up exposing the rot within. That is what we debate, and we bring the facts out before you on debate number 1 tonight, viewers. Debate number 1, the excerpts of the Republic sting operation, which are becoming a global focus now. Debate number 2 this evening, viewers. Is the game-changer approach that puts Bharat first. Debate number 3. How does hurting Hindu sentiments become a publicity stunt for the India alliance? That's debate number 3. And here are the headlines this Wednesday evening on the Debate Tonight. Republic Network's 2018 Khalistan sting is in global focus. Direct link between Trudeau ally and Khalistani terrorist established. Republic Newsbreak confirmed the NIA carries out the biggest ever crackdown on the Khalistani network. Khalistani sympathizers detained, money trail traced, weapons seized and properties attached. India walks the talk on terror.
Nor must we countenance that political convenience determines responses to terrorism, extremism, and violence. Cannot be exercises in cherry picking.
External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar sets the record straight, challenges Canada to show evidence first. From the crackdown at home to stern message at the UN, the Modi government puts Bharat and its interests first. And the Tamil Nadu government calls the fight for Sanatan a publicity stunt. The VHP meets the governor, seeks action on anti-Sanatan comments. And if the Canadians want proof, here it is. The Republic Network's 2018 sting on Khalistani elements, in which we recorded Khalistani terrorists confessing to what they do, is in global focus. Viewers, in October 2018, Republic broadcast a sting operation done by Shawan Sen on Khalistani terrorist Shamsher Singh, where he revealed his anti-India agenda, his terror propaganda, his sources of support, and his terror plans. Now, in an undated video that is going viral, Trudeau's close ally Jagmeet Singh is seen sharing the platform with Khalistani terrorist Shamsher Singh. Remember, viewers, Jagmeet Singh is the person on whose support Trudeau exists. And this direct link, therefore, between the Trudeau government in Canada and the Khalistani terror groups has been established. This is a link that is not aimed at embarrassing Canada. We are putting out details of this link so the Canadians realize what their country is becoming under Trudeau. Nothing but a terrorist haven. Let's debate.
The Trudeau government in Canada is surviving with the support of NDP leader Jagmeet Singh. And here's proof of Trudeau government's direct link with Khalistani elements. Seen in this undated video is Trudeau aide Jagmeet Singh sharing space with pro-Khalistani Shamsher Singh. The man who was stung by Republic in 2018, where he openly admitted his secessionist and terror agenda.
Completely for the secessionist movement. We want India to break up. We want the Nexus to have freedom, Dravidistan to be free. We want the Maoists to be free, because our enemy is the same. Our enemy is Delhi. Our enemy is the Brahmin in Delhi. It's Brahmanism as an ideology. It's the enemy of all the peoples of India, except for the Brahmins, of course, because they enjoy the benefit of that. But it's complete. It's a unification of our goals. All of our goals are aligned. We want Delhi to fall. We want that. that armed struggle is the only way. Investing in armed struggle and destabilizing in India with, how they've been operating for the last 30 years, assassinating Indian government officials, attacking military bases, attacking police officers and, soldiers, and, the Khalistanis have a hit list somewhere of all these, people running around like Saini and Alam and like all these black cats and these police officers that escaped so many commissions. The biggest actions of the movements, we've killed 2,700 police officers. Of various rank. We've killed the Prime Minister, the Chief Minister, generals of the army. These are all targeted killings. So even now, like what's been happening for the last 2.5 years with the KLF and targeting RSS leaders in India, it's the same thing. So the level of violence hasn't increased or decreased. Other leaders of Punjab's RSS, the Hindu Takat, they've been shot in the streets of Punjab by motorcycle-borne assailants. It's happening now. This is the reality.
You believe they were part of the movement?
Yeah, Khalistan Liberation Forces openly accepted that these guys were killed by Khalistan Liberation Force.
A 2-week-long undercover operation revealed the real faces of the so-called Khalistani movement, starting with those who were openly calling for destabilizing India. One such person happens to be Shamsher Singh. This is the same very person with whom Trudeau's right-hand man, Jasmeet Singh, had a meeting in London. And not just that, he also supported the cause of the very organization Shamsher Singh has been representing for years put together.
Ambassador G. Parthasarthi is with us this evening. Kamal Sibal, former Foreign Secretary, former Indian Ambassador to Turkey, Egypt, France and Russia. We have with us also Wyatt Claypool, Senior Correspondent with the National Telegraph, joining us from Canada. Kirk, who is joining us today. Kirk Lubimov is a Strategic Advisor, live from Calgary, Alberta in Canada. Thank you very much. May I begin with you, Mr. Kamal Sibal? More and more evidence is coming up. We just ran parts of a Republic sting operation that was done involving Khalistani terrorists, talking about targeted political killings, of political activists, leaders of the RSS, killings of police officers, claiming that thousands of police officers had been killed, political assassinations had been carried out. These are the same people who seem to be exceptionally close to Jagmeet Singh, who is the person, the leader of this party, the NDP, on whose support Trudeau rests. Of course, he's been trying to distance himself from Trudeau recently, but the fact is Trudeau needs him to survive. So it puts a very clear link between the current Canadian government of Trudeau and these Khalistani terrorists who are openly talking about carrying out thousands of killings on Indian soil. This kind of evidence, what impact will it have globally and on Canada's standing? Mr. Sibal, please.
One or two points. First, that the Canadian system has supported Khalistani forces right from 1969, the time of Jagmeet Singh Chauhan. And then, as you know, Pierre Trudeau, the present Prime Minister's father, refused the extradition of Parmar. And later on, Parmar was responsible for blowing up the Air India plane. Since then, the number of these organizations which are clamoring for so-called Khalistan have spread in Canada, in UK, in Australia, in United States, in the Anglosphere in general. So it's not as if the Five Eye intelligence agencies and the Canadian intelligence agencies, their mission here, after they have intelligence operatives here, they're not aware of what is happening on the ground, what the links are between these elements in Canada and the efforts to revive the Khalistani movement in Punjab. They're also aware of the ISI's role in it. They're not babes in the wood who don't know these things, but they have not acted against these forces. They have hidden behind their rhetoric of freedom of speech and etc., by refusing to act on dossier after dossier that we have formally given to the Canadian government to act against these people. And in recent times, there have been absolutely unspeakable actions by these forces, whether it is asking for targeted killings of our diplomats, formally accredited to Canada, or attacking our missions, or taking out floats celebrating the killing of Mrs. Gandhi, and openly calling for the breakup of India, the balkanization of India. And even now, this Patwant Singh, Gurpatwant Singh, or whoever he is actually threatening personally the Prime Minister of India and his determination to balkanize India. These are the kind of words he uses. So why isn't the Canadian government, the Canadian intelligence agencies, and generally in the Five Eyes, the people responsible for security, not acting against them? There seems to be some kind of a larger political purpose behind it. They can't hide behind the rhetoric of freedom of speech, which freedom of speech allows residents of a country, citizens of a country, to openly call for the assassination of foreign diplomats stationed on their soil. This is not acceptable. This is against the Vienna Convention. This puts enormous mental strain on our diplomats because they have to be worried about their personal security. So basically, it is very difficult to understand what motivates them. But one or two things are clear. As you very rightly said, the Trudeau government is a minority government after the last elections. It depends on the 25 seats that the NDP has, and it can't survive without their support, number one. Number two, about 700,000 Sikh community in Canada. They are a very important 2% of the population. They are concentrated in certain pockets, so they are a very potent electoral body, which any Canadian political party would want to cultivate to make sure that they garner their votes. So there is a political electoral vote bank consideration that lies behind the tolerance of these activities. And thirdly, of course, I think the idea is that India is rising, India is becoming successful, India is now taking the leadership of the global south. It will become a more powerful voice on the global stage. So India needs to be put on the defensive. And one way of putting India on the defensive is to keep raising these issues and human rights issues and issues of this kind to continually blacken, malign the image of India, especially of the present government, so that they have a pressure point on us. And finally, Arnab, although you didn't ask me the question, but I want to address it because this has come up, that they have HUMINT and they have SIGINT and this and that, which implicates India. Now, they say that they send their national security advisor and one other senior foreign office official to talk to us, to share information with us. Now, if they have this evidence, which is SIGINT and HUMINT and whatever else, and it is clinching, why should the government of India repeatedly say, first at the level of the MEA spokesman, now at the level of the foreign minister of India, that you have not shared any specific evidence with us? Give us specific evidence and we will look at it. No responsible government will take this position in public, in the United Nations, challenging the Toronto government, the Canadian government, to come out with some specific evidence so India can act on. And finally, one point, the SIGINT and HUMINT business, look at what happened in the Iraq war. Based on totally false intelligence, they launched a war against an independent country. So let's not rely on this SIGINT and HUMINT nonsense, because they know that they are
without at all, being indirect about it, Kirk and Wyatt, we have been asking this question repeatedly. If this is the precedent that Canada wishes to set, that anybody can justify terrorism in the name of freedom of expression, right? If this is the logic, that it may be terrorism for you, it's freedom of expression for us, then by this very logic, Wyatt or Kirk, or either of you, would Canada also open its doors to the Al-Qaeda? or to the Islamic State or the Jaish-e-Mohammed or the Lashkar-e-Toiba or other terrorist groups as well. So it's quite clear because, and I don't think it's a matter to smile about, Wyatt, because 329 people died in the bombing of an Air India plane that was flying into Canada, and hundreds of Canadians also died in that. That terrorist attack was carried out by these very groups, which are now being supported by Jagmeet Singh.
Oh, I'm smiling precisely because we actually have already started allowing people like ISIS fighters back in the country with no consequences whatsoever after they had basically gone around raping and murdering in Iraq and Syria, and we just don't seem to care at all. And that's the thing, is that while India's been focusing a lot on the Khalistani issue, obviously, over the past several years in regards to Canada, we've been having a problem with almost every sort of terrorist and extremist element to sort of taking root in Canada. The IRGC from Iran, who had killed a bunch of Canadians on flight PS-752 by launching, obviously, government-approved rockets at the plane. The IRGC is still able to operate in Canada. They're not listed as a terrorist organization. They do massive amounts of money laundering in Canada, and we let all sorts of other groups into Canada. The CCP effectively runs like their own sort of like harassment police stations where they go after their sort of own Chinese diaspora and try and force them to sort of serve the Beijing agenda or not engage in politics at all if they're not willing to. So that's my perspective on that. But I just wanted to bring up something about the tape that Republic TV has from Shamsher Singh, because some NDP defenders will try and claim, well, all that stuff that he said came out after Jagmeet Singh had this meeting alongside Shamsher Singh. But people have to remember, at that meeting that Jagmeet Singh was president at, although he didn't engage in it himself, Jagmeet Singh was sitting on a panel alongside people who, even at that event, were directly advocating for violence and saying that India should be broken up by violent means. And again, this is not just some sort of principled freedom fighter type stance, even though like terrorists, of course, think of themselves as freedom fighters. But as we see in that tape, Shamsher even endorses the idea of Naxalite communist terrorism in eastern India, this unprincipled atheistic terrorism that just is going after the government for the sake of it. This is not saying that we should be, that state of Khalistan and the rest of India should be able to live in relative peace. He's obviously an advocate of effectively like ethnic cleansing.
I take that. Wyatt, as I listen to you and other very serious Canadian journalists and analysts, it is becoming apparent to me, and Shawan, by the way, carried out that sting operation in London, Wyatt, some time back. He's our senior editor. He's with me in the studio. What is the significance of that video? And Jagmeet Singh is not a nobody. You know, he is the chief of the NDP, which is the largest party in the House of Commons in the Canadian Parliament. He can decide who's going to form the government tomorrow.
Well, in fact, Arnab, as Wyatt was also pointing out, this became a talking point during one of the elections with regards to his presence with Shamsher Singh. And this question was essentially asked to Jagmeet, to which the response has essentially been that, look here, I have not said this. Importantly, that has been his public position all this while. He says it's freedom of expression, and he would never speak about...
Would you do the same freedom of expression with
public position
from another terrorist group?
He was only caught off guard when this picture went viral. In fact, it was reported by the Canadian media, and that's when this question came up, that why don't you come out in the open and speak about the Khalistan issue, or perhaps distance yourself, which he hasn't. This becomes very clear. A man who is openly calling for violent extremism, killings, and he has admitted to the fact that RSS leaders have been killed by the Khalistani Liberation Force. He's admitting to that. He has disrupted several events in London and, for that matter, even in Canada. And this is the same person with whom Jagmeet Singh actually shares the dais.
So the reason we are putting out this kind of evidence, Kirk, and may I get you in on this, so that the larger issue is driven home by somebody. To the Canadians, that I think Trudeau has completely misrepresented the fact. I think what's happening right now, Kirk, is that the Prime Minister of Canada is going around making a strong defense for a terrorist. Unfortunate. You know, the way in which he died, but at the end of the day, he was a terrorist who took responsibility for several targeted bomb blasts and killings in India. How is this looking back home in Canada? Kirk?
It's getting slowly brushed off. You know, the first further we're moving away from Trudeau's accusations without any proof, the longer it looks like a publicity stunt. We just had a couple days ago pro-Khalistani protests in Toronto, where they were spitting and hitting an image of Mr. Modi. And things like that went absolutely without a hiccup, without really local media picking it up. And it's unfortunate that, silence is just as complicit in what is happening. And we don't have politicians who are brave enough or are willing enough to address the extremism that is happening in this country. And again, it's not just with the pro-Khalistani extremism, it's all kinds of extremism. Our justice system is almost non-existent at this point, and we need to see more direct language in addressing and being a good partner to India as well. I would like to see our relationship grow. Our business future together is very fruitful, but we need to be there for India as a partner and address their concerns as well.
Ambassador Parthasarathi, now we have these pictures which have been going viral. I want to play them again. They're in the middle of your screen. Ambassador Parthasarathi, in this footage, data which is still to be ascertained, this gentleman, Shamsher Singh, who is a Khalistani, is seen alongside Jagmeet Singh. Jagmeet Singh is exceptionally close to Trudeau. And can I run the pictures full frame? Trudeau, all of this while, has been saying, I am for the rule of law. I am for the path of justice. I am for the rule of law. The question that emerges is, he is depending on the political support of someone who says, we want to kill political activists in India, we want to carry out bomb blasts, we want to carry out complete violence, we want to break up India using violence, and then for Trudeau to take his support and to take the support of these people and then try and put out this pretense that I'm for the rule of law, is this boomeranging? Because if it is indeed proven that the terrorist met Jagmeet Singh and Jagmeet Singh has been meeting terrorists, then the Canadian Prime Minister is indirectly taking the support of those who genuinely believe in terrorism.
Well, so did his father. Let's not forget that the Air India aircraft, which a bomb was placed in Canada and blew up and killing over 150 passengers, the person who was found guilty of it was quietly released by none other than the President Trudeau's father. So I think this is a long-term thing, but more importantly, the one factor we have to bear in mind is that these guys who are smuggled in, and when I've seen a fair amount of that when I was in Pakistan, they come in, are not necessarily Canadians but others also, but they come in via Pakistan. They cross the border into India from Lahore or nearby. Some of them may have an Indian visa, but a very substantial number, thoroughly briefed by the ISI in Pakistan, they come in through that. And the other point is, let's not forget also that the first person who was convicted of that horrendous placing of a bomb inside an Air India aircraft, he released him within a few years. That's his man's father. So I think there is a thing to be borne in mind that this is a family tradition, but right now it has been carried too far, because what has happened is there's been a large inflow of not Sikhs from India. Sikhs from India, I know, keep away from them, but from other countries who relate very closely to all this, on this Khalistan business. And that is how it happens within Canada. All these mainstream politicians from the Trudeau party, they all have this sort of a link with the Khalistanis. And therefore, they have full access to whatever they want to do. They get enough money to send across to Pakistan and other places to see that they can get arms across to their favorites, whoever they are, across the border. And they have a direct role in terrorism within India. They have a role in the transfer of arms and ammunition. And this has continued. It's continued father and son with the Trudeaus. So my own point is, I think a much more strong putting together of us of information concerning the Trudeau family as a whole and their connection with terrorists in Punjab needs to be brought well to the notice of both the Canadians and their American neighbors. So it will be required now, and I'm sure we'll follow up, a detailed strike at these guys in political terms. Let's now face it, Canadians are very self-respecting people.
No, I think there will be.
You'll have to see this guy out of office if you want things to improve.
No, I think my concern is to the contrary. But my concern is, and truly I was, every country decides the direction in which it wants to go. You want to legalize drugs, you want to legalize the use of fentanyl, meth, hard drugs, and then call this individual self-expression, then society goes down a certain path. However, so that nobody in Canada thinks that we are taking a very hard, only Indian stance on it, I'd like to say we are talking about a reasonable stance on the issue. Could you, Shawan, and by the way, Shawan has done the most extensive series of sting operations on Khalistani terror groups in the United Kingdom, risking his own life at that time. Shawan, can you tell all in Canada who may be watching this, what open intentions of violence were exposed when you spoke to these Khalistani groups? Who are these people? Are these innocent NGO-type activists, or are they far, far more dangerous than that?
Well, in fact, staying out of United Kingdom, Canada and US for that matter, you've had the most wanted terrorist Paramjit Singh Pamma, who's wanted by the National Investigation Agency, whom we first stung. He openly admitted to the fact that, one, there is a tacit understanding with the Canadian government, there's a tacit understanding with Pakistan, and the very fact that their only main objective is to destabilize India. Now, that is their main motive. It turns out that there is a drug business which is basically underway. And to basically funnel this entire thing, they're raising their entire funding, and that's exactly what is
links
happening.
To the Chinese as well?
Yeah, links to the Chinese too. They've openly made a statement about it. This man, Shamsher Singh, who's seen on the screen, this man has made an admission about the fact that there have been multiple killings in Punjab, RSS leaders who have been killed, and he's admitted to the fact that this was done with the support of Khalistan Liberation Front. In fact, one person, Arshdeep Adalla, against whom there is credible evidence, to borrow the words of Justin Trudeau, credible evidence, for the last 4 years, he's in Surrey, in Canada, and is plotting against several leaders here in Punjab. In fact, he has been charge-sheeted, but what has happened is that he was perhaps hand in gloves with Hardeep Singh Nijjar, given a complete free run in Canada, and that is the reason why you have about 7 to 8 known Khalistani terrorists who have been sheltered in Canada.
Now, the point here is, Dr. Zachary Paikin, you also look at the diplomatic aspects of all this. These are people who say Pakistan is our ally, and we all know that Pakistan had given sanctuary to Osama bin Laden and eventually hidden this fact from the Americans. America had to go in and take Osama out. Dr. Paikin, is one seeing the slippery slope that Canada seems to be on? Should it continue down this path? Because the links between these groups and operatives in Pakistan is well known and documented.
But what you've shown so far this evening, Arnab, is obviously some disturbing footage. I don't think that there's a mainstream discourse in Canada that Pakistan is an important ally. There certainly is a significant Pakistani diaspora in Canada. I think that the emphasis in our political discourse in general emphasizes the importance of maintaining a solid bilateral relationship with India more than anything else. That seems to be a focus primarily of the Conservative Party, but also of the Liberal Party. It's recognized as an important strategic goal. I think there just seems to be an absence of an understanding of what is necessary in order to achieve that. And so, that's going to require certain compromises on all sides, a certain more realistic approach, not only as it relates to the issue of terrorism, but also the issue of trade, a whole number of different issues. Ultimately, Canada has unveiled what it calls its Indo-Pacific strategy, late last year, less than a year ago at this point. And India is ranked number 2 is listed second of all the countries in the region after China in terms of the importance of the country in that strategy. And the emphasis is overwhelmingly on the things that we share, the interests that we share, the values that we share, rightly or wrongly, in terms of analysis. And so I think it shows the extent to which, there is this prioritization of the India file among Asia washers in Ottawa. It's just there needs to be a little bit more of stock taking as to the fact that, we have to be realistic in our expectations in terms of what other countries are expecting from us as well. We sort of still think that we're in a position, at least to dictate terms, at least when it comes to those issues that are of interest to us. But relations are very much a give and take. And I think we get that in some contexts, but not necessarily in every context, particularly as it relates to relations with countries with the global south.
Yeah, but people in India are extremely upset, extremely angry, and as you would appreciate, maybe Professor Nalapat can put it best, there is a growing feeling that this was simply a political move by Trudeau. And I think, interestingly, Professor Nalapat, I was informed that a poll came out a couple of hours back. It's the first major popularity poll since Trudeau made these allegations against India. And it shows him slipping down even further, which means it may have had the opposite effect. People want a leader who's mature, who weighs his words, and does not do something just in response and unable to back it up with evidence. It's been almost 10 days or more. How many days now?
More than 10 days.
It's been 3 months to the incident, 10 to 11 days since the allegations, and not a drop of evidence.
And not a single arrest.
And not a single arrest in this matter. So how is this looking, Professor Nalapat? And India is getting angry. Indian students are saying we're going to pull out. We fund about $10 billion of education in the Canadian higher education system. It's going to have an impact on that. So how's it looking 10 to 11 days later?
Look, Arnab, first of all, justice is pictured as being blindfolded, which means that you should not really, give a verdict without knowing who's in front of you. Now, supposing all these facts about Canada, facts that go back, as Ambassador Parthasarathy very correctly said, decades of harboring of terrorists, harboring of individuals who escaped there and who have committed murders and other atrocities in India and other countries. If you put a list of these and you don't name the country, you just, you blindfold yourself and say you're not going to name the country. You're simply going to say a country whose leadership is backing terror groups, active against the world's most populous democracy, etc., active in backing groups that are relying on a state where, frankly, the military, along with the military of its good friend, which, by the way, the Trudeau family also is very familiar with, a very large country, is very active in the drugs trade. And you have a record of so many killings, so many acts of sabotage, and you put all that down in paper and you blindfold somebody and you don't give the name of the country, and tell me one individual in 100,000 who will not name this country and its leadership as, frankly, a terror state run by a leadership that is facilitating terror. That is what Canada today is. Justin Trudeau, well, he's in the G7. He's part of NATO. So, but, that doesn't give you a free pass. It's not like you have a 007 kind of thing in which you can kill and shoot anybody and nothing will happen to you. There's no 007 anymore. There were in the geopolitics of the past, but not anymore. Now, Zachary was talking about the Indo-Pacific. I'm so glad Zachary was talking about the Indo-Pacific, because till today, most Canadian think tanks are talking of the Asia-Pacific. They are following in the footsteps of China to in Beijing, the word Indo-Pacific is a toxic word. They don't like it when you say Indo-Pacific. They want you to use the word Asia-Pacific as a stepping stone to Sino-Pacific. And Canada, even today, you go to think tanks, you go to discussions, and most of them are still labeled Asia-Pacific, Asia-Pacific, Asia-Pacific. I'm glad, Arnab, that you found one Canadian who is talking about the Indo-Pacific. I'm delighted to hear that, because I've been told by think tankers in India that they find it very difficult. And a point I want to raise again, and that is, some of us who are active in meeting think tankers here, the Canadians just don't want to discuss this issue of Khalistan and Khalistani terror. Whenever anybody in the Indian side brings it up, they just ignore it. They don't respond to it. And they pretend as though that part of the conversation just did not exist. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to discuss it. In other words, they're not blind to justice. They're blind, but not where the scales of justice are concerned, where they should be, but they're blind to terror. They don't want to discuss terror at all. Which means they don't want to do anything about it.
Professor, let me put that to the test with Wyatt. Wyatt, it may be true that for a couple of decades, this matter has been sort of brushed under the carpet as not a major issue for the people of Canada. Khalistani terrorism, because Canada has not been a victim of Khalistani terrorism. However, Wyatt, is it a point of concern that the principal source of political support to Khalistani terrorism might end up becoming your Prime Minister? Because Jagmeet Singh has 14% in the ratings. He's in the running for Prime Ministership. He's openly declared that he will be a contender for Prime Ministership. It may seem obscure, but in fractured multi-party politics, anything can happen. He's incredibly powerful as of now as the leader of the NDP. What if the NDP were to grab power in Canada and Jagmeet Singh, who's an open supporter of Khalistani terrorism, was to be the Prime Minister in a future date? He's relatively young. He's about 45 years old. Anything can be the case. He's ambitious. Can Canada afford to have a terror backer as its Prime Minister?
Well, even though anything can happen, I think we can all rest easy knowing that the incompetence of Jagmeet Singh increases proportionally to his polling. So he's always the best saboteur of himself. But at the same time, I think right now with Justin Trudeau, you don't even have to really worry about Jagmeet Singh becoming the Prime Minister, because Justin Trudeau is already doing all the things Jagmeet Singh would probably do anyways, picking dumb fights with India as basically effectively pretexts to basically put India's relationship with Canada on the back burner, create tensions in order to then raise China up in the sort of rankings of people that Canada should be associating with. I think that's really kind of what's going on here. But I would say that it's actually untrue that Canada hasn't been the target of Khalistani terrorism, considering that most of the people who died in the Air India bombing were Canadian citizens, and that through the Khalistani perpetrated drug trade that happens in many Canadian urban centers, many Canadians are dying in the fentanyl crisis from a lot of the drugs that a lot of these Khalistani gangs are peddling in. It's one of those things where I think that the Canadian government needs to take this more seriously, because it's not a foreign matter, because the vast majority of the Sikh community despises the Khalistanis in Canada. They don't get any funding from regular Sikhs, so they engage in the drug trade. And we're in the middle of a massive fentanyl crisis where it's becoming one of the leading deaths in Canada. And if we actually took extremism seriously, we could actually clean up one of the major sources of drugs being sold, because generally it turns out that the Khalistanis tend to actually be much more better organized drug dealers than the typical people you see on the street. And I want to make one reference to my colleague Daniel Boardman, because he made the point that if the Canadian government wants to make sure that Khalistanis aren't getting assassinated in Canada, one of the best ways of doing that would be cracking down on all the Khalistani drug gangs that are whacking each other over the years. Yeah, there's still evidence to come out whether or not there might have been an extrajudicial killing against Nijar, but the vast majority of the time in Canada, it tends to be drug gangs wiping each other out in combats for drug turf.
No, I think, Wyatt, extremely important point raised by you. I saw Ambassador Parthasarathi and Wyatt Kirk and Dr. Zachary, among our three panelists, of course, Madhav is a very well-known strategic affairs thinker. Kamal Sibal is an absolutely very respected diplomat. Ambassador Parsati is one of the senior-most diplomats, so everybody is weighing every word. Now, these are important issues. Ambassador Parsati, Canada is not our enemy. In fact, we have the Deputy Army Chief of Canada, Major General Peter Scott in India. He's saying we have a great relationship. There's a political issue. But these political issues have a long-term impact. Canada has problems of drugs, addiction, healthcare. It needs to look at. These diversionary issues, in my view, will never work. Maybe it'll end up propelling an internal debate on Khalistan, which is necessary in Canada's own interest.
Well, let me put it this way. Canada should realize that the people who it is backing, who come to India, let loose armed fighting within India by the supply of weapons through Pakistan that these people operate. Every one of these Canadians comes to Pakistan, has a free run with the ISI. The ISI officials, please ask them to have a look at what the ISI officials in Canada are doing. They are the people who have the closest links with these chaps. So, let's face it, during partition, Pakistan drove out every Sikh in the country. They live in India. Some go astray and have taken to, and especially those abroad who don't know how Sikhs grew in a united India. They are the people who are causing the problem. The sad part is that the Trudeaus, who are otherwise a very respected family, seem to have got it all wrong. And the fact is that their policies are hurting our relationship. And you can be certain, look at the relationship we have with the US. There are Sikhs there also, but would they dare to do what is happening in Canada? The FBI will pounce on them the next morning. What are the Canadian law and order authorities doing? Have they do the Canadian intelligence services have no information of what these guys are discussing? It's a fraud.
Especially the absence, especially in the absence of evidence. This had to be followed up, and if it's not been, the absence of evidence, it's looking extremely shallow. Kirk, what's the way around? Is there a conversation in Canada on how to resurrect the relationship from here?
Well, we need to have an honest conversation about what is happening and open up the conversation channels back to India. When Trudeau left India, they canceled trade missions right away as well, which was highly unfortunate because it's costing people and businesses money and their livelihood as well. And Canada is talking loudly with the Niger situation about the integrity of our sovereignty. But let's not forget, Niger came to Canada illegally and was rejected twice and was allowed to stay in Canada illegally. So how did that happen? If we're serious about the integrity of our sovereignty, we have to make sure that we don't let extremists and the people staying and coming here illegally as well. It's a really question from, every aspect of the government organization needs to be examined closely, and we need answers on how people like that come here to Canada illegally. We also saw that the person, another Khalistani extremist in Winnipeg that was murdered by a rival gang, he came to Canada illegally as well. So we have somehow this open door policy that seems to be quite fruitful to be taken advantage of by extremism and by extremists, and we need to make sure that stops. And we need to open dialogue.
Long term, these things do tend to boomerang. Shawan, one last quick point you want to make with Mr. Sibal.
Well, in fact, there was a glimmer of hope, Council, with regards to the joint framework that came in back in 2018 after the disastrous visit of Justin Trudeau, inclusion of Babbar Khalsa and the International Sikh Youth Federation. People here in India were hoping things would actually change. But now what we see is Justin Trudeau's entire policy has gone downhill.
We showed a tremendous tolerance all these years. And in the recent years, our relationship with Canada improved a great deal. Canada has invested a lot of money, but $700 billion in the Indian economy, $70 billion by their pension funds, $30 billion of trade or whatever. In fact, we were negotiating a trade agreement. Our commerce minister said publicly several times that next on the agenda is an FTA with Canada. Yes. So in other words, despite the fact that there was this serious provocation all these years on the issue of Khalistan, we were willing to overlook that in the larger interest of our ties with Canada, an important country. So therefore, it's very difficult to understand why this Trudeau is bent on wrecking the ties with India. Arnab, there is an important issue here. Now that he has gone as far as he has in Parliament to formally say that there are credible allegations, and now saying that there is SIGINT and HUMINT and all that, he can't step back. He'll be politically finished. After this
he can't be allowed.
With the Nazi collaborator whom they honored in the Parliament, and Trudeau has been embarrassed. If on this issue he steps back, and there is a general view that he overstepped the kind of information he had.
Domestically, politically, he'll be finished, but even in terms of standing. I agree with you. No, he can't step back.
That he is determined he will go down this road in order to prove he's right, and this will become a kind of an issue in our ties in the months ahead, which will not serve the interests of both countries. So I can't understand.
No, it will remain. It will remain. Well, a lot of people in Canada themselves who I've been speaking to are not able to understand. I don't think he's being measured in his response. He sort of painted himself into a corner. I'll watch this carefully, but I thank everyone, including Dr. Pekin, Kirk, Wyatt Claypool, Professor Nalapat, Kawal Sibal, and of course, Ambassador Parthsarthi for that conversation. On the other side, ladies and gentlemen, as there's been a lot of sharp shooting by our foreign minister, at the United Nations and on the sidelines of the UN, the question emerges, why was there never such straight talk earlier by earlier foreign ministers? The change in our stance and what it means when I'm back.